Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and really look forward to this session here. So if start out just by talking Paulette and then Jason, very quick snapshot about your career. And then Jason and Paulette, if you could also talk about your entrepreneurial status, that would be great. So Narendra, can you just give us a quick snapshot of your career path and tell the audience, you know, kind of what you've done quickly?
Sure. I think I was having some audio problems. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm the EVP and General Manager of the Africa Channel, which is a media company that seeks to present contemporary narratives about Africa to the global audience. And we have basically three divisions: our linear cable channel, which is the Africa Channel itself; our OTT offering, which is called, but it's named a different brand, Demand Africa. And then of course we have our production which is Tax Studios. And what else did you want me to say at this stage, Michelle? Hello?
Seems to be having some difficulty.
Yeah, she's got connectivity issues.
Are you having difficulty? Am I cutting in and out?
No, you're good. I think Michelle might just want to dial in on her phone. The video connectivity is not there.
I'm hearing you guys perfectly.
All right, and then just really quickly about my background, I started my career in engineering and in business, and through the course of it, I'd always been interested in the arts and the creative side. And so through a long and circuitous route, with very sort of unhappy parents who dissuaded me from doing this, I moved into the creative side of the entertainment business, and then, you know, found myself into this current role where I'm balancing both creative and business decisions, which I love.
Great, great. Jason, can you give us a little bit about your background and also touch on that entrepreneurial spark that I know you have?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I always tell people when someone asks what I do for a living, I struggle to describe it or what my career path was. I always say I'm an attorney by training, but an entrepreneur by vocation. And I started my career in the media industry almost exactly 20 years ago. And if you were to go back prior to that, in school, like in high school, for example, I was a musician. And interestingly, though, I didn't have the ear, right? I didn't have perfect pitch. I couldn't just hear a song and play it. And one day a friend of mine came in, played a song by Mark Cohn called Walking in Memphis after hearing it on the radio once. He played and sang the whole thing. And I went, well, I'll never be able to do that. So maybe my career playing music is over. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll be a movie director, and convinced the principal of my high school to allow a friend of mine who's a very successful entrepreneur now, and myself, to make pretty much a full-length motion picture in high school. And then I got to USC, went to film and business school there, and found all these talented directors within a few weeks, and figured out pretty fast that I was somewhat uniquely talented in business relative to all of these creative people, and I had a real talent for numbers. And so I became the business end of things for all of these creative people that I had been hanging out with my whole life. And you know, I guess through a series of synchronicities, I guess you could call it, I continued my path in the media business. I forecasted the paradigm shift from physical goods to digital goods as part of a business school project in 2001. And I was looking at cell phones and MP3 players and Walkmans going, why would you carry two, you know? And that obviously started to validate, and honestly getting involved with VSDA. The first thing I did when I got in the industry was join VSDA and start going to the conferences. To Steve Nickerson's point, I started to find mentors and get involved in trade groups, and then fell into making a movie when I was the ripe old age of 19. I got into Sundance. It was music centric. It was called The Beat, and that got my foot in the door, making 1 or 2 movies a year. And I started to see the music industry from the outside, because we started producing music videos, and it was just doing this, right? I guess from your perspective, doing this, just dropping off a cliff in the early 2000s. And because I was very involved, doing any job I could, really, I would never say no. I would produce anything I get my hands on. I got a meeting with an artist named Master P, who at the time was you know, it's him, Jay-Z, and Puffy were the big three in you know, American urban music, and pitched him on an idea doing his digital distribution. I had nothing. I had nothing but an idea, and I'll never forget. Suge Knight called him on his BlackBerry while we were sitting there, and he turned off his BlackBerry on Suge Knight and listened to me talk, and he gave me a 5-year worldwide deal to do his digital distribution. And that was the genesis of what today is GoDigital Media Group, the company I run, that owns a pretty substantial music IP business, owns a networks business, has a linear music television network called Latino Networks. We also own Me Too, which is a Hispanic targeted media publisher, and a couple of other businesses in our portfolio. And we're making a renewed push into e-commerce now as a third pillar of what we're doing. And you know, I don't think any of this would have been possible if I hadn't just really played to my strengths. You know, it's kind of like wanting to be a pro athlete, but maybe being a good athlete, but not really being able, not quite being able to perform at that level, but being great at numbers, let's say. And so instead of banging your head on the wall for 10 years trying to be a pro athlete, go be a CPA. And then if you're really good at that, maybe you can be a business manager for pro athletes. That's kind of what I ended up doing, is just playing to my strengths and getting very involved in the industry. I really resonated with what Steve said about that.
That's great. So big plug for trade organizations, everyone out there. I'm a big believer in that as well, and kind of do what you're good at. That's a great kind of you know, something really good to coin and for people to think about as they're pursuing careers. Paulette, can you talk about your career path? And I know you've got that entrepreneurial spirit as well, so that would be great if you could touch on that.
Totally. Thank you, everybody, first of all, for having me here. So similar to Jason, I actually was a musician, but I did that for quite some time. I've been writing music since I was about 8 years old, and wanted to focus on that. I went to UCLA Film School and pursued that creative side for quite a bit. But the way I supported my way through college was programming. So I had that technical side of my head plus this creative side. And finding a combination of the two, especially during the time that I was kind of growing up, wasn't like the right time. Nothing had really fulfilled yet. So I'd end up like doing editing, and then I missed the programming side. I do the, you know, more technical side, and I missed the creative side. So I took a year off, and I decided to focus on my music only. I ended up playing, you know, opening for Cyndi Lauper, playing at CBGB's in New York, the Viper Room around here. And I did that for a year. And I said, you know what, if it's not going to happen at the end of the year, it's not going to happen. And so I gave myself that 1 year, and didn't happen, moved on. And after that, I started focusing more on project management within the entertainment industry. I got into accounting and business. The UCLA Film School stuff really helped, and learning about all that. And when I found out through a mutual friend working in the industry about a company called Ascent Media, it was the most fascinating thing ever about home entertainment. What happens after a film or a TV show is released, you know, during the regular ways of theatrical and broadcast. Then you go to the distribution area of all the consumers who want to watch it at home. It was the most fascinating thing to me, because I never put thought to it. I never realized, oh my God, these little menus, they have buttons and they execute things. That's programming, right? And then there's the creative side where you got to come up with the way the menu looks. And it was fascinating, and I fell in love. And I think I stopped sleeping at that time. I think my life actually ended because countless hours just working. My work ethic has always been sort of like the work's a reflection of who I am. So I would always spend countless hours wherever I was. So I was at Ascent Media for a little bit, and then I moved to Panasonic Hollywood Labs during the Blu-ray HD DVD format war. And being over there, I started noticing a little bit more about QC, quality control. And I had an idea. And I decided to leave Panasonic and start my own company called Blue Focus in 2007. It was a huge decision for me to make, and many advised me not to do it. But I always figured I don't want to grow up, be 80 years old and looking back and being like, what if I didn't do this? What if I did do this? And I didn't want to be that old grumpy person that just kind of always said, I could have done it if I tried. So I left, you know, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give it all I got. And if I fail, not a big deal. I've made enough, you know, a good reputation that I'll get another job. So I took off in 2007, started Blue Focus. It's been fun ever since. I think I lost another part of my life after that. So I've gained about 35 years in the last 15 years, starting a business, heart palpitations, health issues. But man, I wouldn't trade it for anything. We've grown now. We've officially changed our name to GoDigital Group. We've expanded our services outside of just QC. Now we do digital media services. We also do SaaS. So we're actually creating software that we're licensing out. And so we've expanded our portfolio on what we do. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I still own 100% of the company, and we're privately held. And so I think that's the major thing that I found, is that you give everything you got and you enjoy what you do, then I think you're fine. And so that's where we're at now. And that's my career path. I did, and just throwing out there, go back to school. I needed to get the business acumen. So I ended up getting my master's degree from Pepperdine University, took a Goldman Sachs program as well, and then also UCLA School of Anderson. And I think that was very important too, to get me to the next level, because, you know, it's entrepreneurship to a certain point, and then kind of learning that other part that required me to, it was needed in order for me to move to the company to the next level. So here we are now.
That's great. And actually kind of skips me to the next two questions that I have for everyone. Jason, let's start with you. And looking back, would you have made the same decisions today that you made back then in your progression, or would you have made some changes, or what?
Yeah, I don't think I would do anything differently. I think the most important thing looking back was emotional congruence, right? Always having a congruence between how I feel and how I think. And if my emotions are set the true north for me, if you will, then I'm very decisive, and I almost always make the right decision for me, and almost never have any regrets. And, you know, in the path that I've gone, I certainly didn't foresee. I didn't foresee, for example, spending a very large part of my career in the music industry. You know, I always thought I'd be a movie guy. You know, I'm very involved in the current iteration of television now and multi-platform publishing, but not involved in movies at all, and haven't been really for like 8 years. So, you know, I really just try to focus on understanding what my personal values are, making sure that that I don't have any fear-based holding patterns emotionally that are holding me back from being able to see opportunities and take those opportunities. And it's the most interesting thing. We've probably all bought a new car, and once we buy that car, we see that model of car everywhere on the road. And the reality is that it was always there. Those other cars of that model were always there. We just never noticed them because our reticular activating system in our brain wasn't tuned to see those cars. And so, you know, the number one thing for me is really just making sure that I'm always tuned properly so that I can see those opportunities. I'm not held back from taking those opportunities if they're congruent for me. And then, yeah, the decisions take care of themselves. And it's been very successful for me. A lot of synchronicities happen in my life. Good things happen that I never see coming simply because of this process.
That's great. Really good point about the car on the road, not seeing it. It all of a sudden becomes this awareness factor, and you know, when things are open to you, it's interesting to see them. Narendra, would you have done anything different?
I guess hindsight is 20/20, and you could always look back and say, you know, maybe I could have shortened this. But, you know, during the times when I had to make the decisions that I had to make, you know, my story is sort of a classic immigrant story. I come from a culture where if you're not an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, you're wasting your time. And so the arts certainly were not encouraged. So I, of course, had to get the engineering degrees and the management degrees so I could get my parents off my back.
Yeah.
And when I started earning my own money is when I said, well, I'm going to Hollywood. and they literally laughed at me, thinking this is the end of my career. They still, a lot of them still don't quite know what I do, but nevertheless, you know, I do believe that there was sort of the structure of going through, you know, your degrees and everything else, even though I may not use every element of it, and I may have jumped into sort of a more creative degree earlier in my career. But like Paulette, I also went back because I'd gotten the sort of engineering and the management degrees out of the way. I felt like I needed to sort of become more schooled in sort of more entertainment oriented things. So I did go to UCLA as well, and mainly to learn all the
USC.
The semantics that was involved, because one of the things, and we can talk about this later, in terms of biases, you know, there are suits and there are creatives, and never the two shall meet. And it's particularly if you're running your own organization, as Paulette and Jason are doing, it's different. But when you're in large companies, where largely I've worked in big companies, the two sides never meet, and I had to make that bridge. But yeah, you know, if anything, to answer your question, I may have shortened the amount of time that I would have done on the sort of the things that I was not that passionate about.
Good.
And the second thing that I would have probably shortened is the length of, or the tenure in each of these companies. I think I spent too long at NBC before I realized there was a big world out there. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So it's a lot of it sounds like awareness is a big thing, like understanding when something comes to you, don't push it aside. Like really think about it if you've got this inkling really to go. So Paulette, we heard you're really happy, and that's good. It sounds like you wouldn't change anything, would you?
Oh, geez, I think as Narendra said, it's hindsight's 20/20. I've always lived by the motto, play the hand that you were dealt like it's the hand that you wanted. Yeah. And, you know, go back to the past, you change things, it could alter everything. So I always kind of go, the past defines who you are today, but it doesn't define who you are tomorrow. And so I don't dwell on the past, because it is what it is. So.
You all talked a lot about education. One of the questions I had was, did education play a role in your career path? It sounds like it did, both on the kind of undergrad, finding out what you wanted to do, and then the, you know, kind of grad school components of really getting into the core. I always say grad school taught me how to think, a lot more critical thinking as opposed to just the high level stuff. I think we're going to go into now more about what I call the what it takes. And I want to ask you all about, you know, what do you look for when hiring someone? So if a young individual is kind of coming straight to you, and what are the certain things that you look for? You all have varying degrees. I'm going to start with Narendra. What do you look for? What are the traits, kind of the skill set or the behavior that is most appealing to you?
Well, it really depends upon whether we're hiring for sort of the more technical jobs, or if it's sort of creative management jobs, right? I think in technical jobs, clearly we're hiring you to do something very specific. So your experience levels in that specific thing is extremely important. I think on your previous job experiences, it depends upon whether we have the ramp to be able to train you on the job, or we need you to hit the ground running, and that's going to determine how much of your previous experience. But in the creative and the sort of the management and the general management sides of things, I really look for adaptability, because especially now that I'm sort of heading a smaller company, where every day it seems like we keep changing course because we just have to be adaptable. I really look and see if people, how they, you know, what about their past, what about the things that they're interested in has allowed them to be adaptable. And then the second thing is taste. I mean, how have their tastes evolved? So much of what we do is judgment calls, often based on things that you're doing outside of work. Anybody can write a resume and it looks great, but I kind of try to figure out like who, because I'm hiring a person, not some you know, a robot to fill a job. And I want that person to be able to fit our culture, you know, can collaborate, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Jason, what do you look for? I'm going to get specific. You're going to hire a kind of young business-oriented person who's going to be your right hand. What are you looking for? What are the traits?
That's a really good question. So we have, I'm going to answer that.
Good questions, Jason. You know that.
I'm going to answer that in two parts. So we have a very formal process we developed for a number of reasons. First off, we're trying to ferret out bias in the process because we believe good ideas can come from anywhere and that everybody should have a voice. So we will typically develop a job rec and put that in the market and collect resumes and referrals from people, whatever. But we anonymize those before those resumes are filtered and sorted. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want bias around, like, for example, names or anything else. Mm-hmm. And, you know, perception of gender or anything like that. And once that's anonymized, before we actually interview anybody, we test them. For almost every position in our company, we develop some type of an exercise that allows the person who's the prospect to experience what the job would be like and allows us as the employer to experience the skills and attributes they come to the door with. And typically these exercises are time pressured. If you don't exactly know what you're doing, you're not going to finish it on time, and that's the point, because we want to see how you critical think and problem solve under pressure. Great. And then that ferrets out, weeds out more than 80% of applicants, and of the remaining 20% or so, we'll then interview for cultural fit. And, you know, whether it's a technical role or a management role or operations or whatever, there can be slight differences. So that process has served us very well. I mean, I have, this surprises me to this day, but when we do performance reviews, and we just did our mid-year reviews, we have millennials saying that they see themselves spending the rest of their careers at our company. It's like mind blown. So this process has worked really well for us. The second part of the answer to your question is, there have been cases, ongoing cases, where somebody will take the prerogative to contact me outside of there being any particular job in the market. Mm-hmm. And they will start to build a relationship with me. They'll ask for advice, they'll want mentorship, they'll find some way to connect, you know, whether it's through a trade group or somebody I've worked with, the son or daughter of. And those relationships oftentimes, it could be 5 or 10 years later, turn into something. And so when we're hiring for a role like you're talking about, it often comes through that formal process. But there are cases where, you know, there is a relationship of some type, mentor-mentee or friendship or whatever has arisen, and occasionally we'll even create a role for somebody that becomes available, because when we find someone that we believe is truly exceptional and a great fit for us, we do everything we can to take the opportunity to work with them. And so we'll even create roles in some cases for people.
That's great. Paulette, and also just to let everyone know, we're running short on time, but I do want to finish this because I want to find out from you, you know, someone who started their own company, what you look for in individuals to work at your company. What do you want to?
I'll make it quick. So what we look for, I don't care how long the resume is and what experience anyone has. It's the number one thing that I find most important is a collaborative type of approach, and more communications, number one, and whether they fit the company culture. You could have the smartest person on staff, the best equipment ever, but if it doesn't mesh well with everybody else, it's not going to succeed. So we really look for compatibility, ensuring that the person is ambitious, wants to learn, wants to have knowledge. And those we will put time and energy into, even if they don't have that knowledge. If they have that capability of learning something more and they want to be a team player, then that's the number one thing that we focus on.
That's great. You know, this is about leadership. This panel is, and we have 3 leaders on this call. I can tell, obviously, just by your resumes and speaking with you and everything that you've accomplished. So last round, we'll start with Narendra. Your advice to someone your advice to someone midway in their career, let's call it that mid-level, and they're now thinking about becoming a leader, like becoming this to the next phase. I always say, you know, you're in like you're in startup, then you're in like set up your career, and then you're in that growth phase where you really want to zoom up. What is your advice to someone who really wants to jump into that leadership role? This is what I would do.
I mean, personally, I think ultimately everything is dictated by your results, right? I mean, it's what you've been able to accomplish in your career, and you know, it's that's sort of paramount above everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I still realize there are sort of certain ceilings for people to get past the mid-level. Some caused by biases. We've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, how do you break through those?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've all faced some biases of some kind or the other. I will borrow from one of the principles that I've used through my career because I, just coming, I guess, from an immigrant background, I tend not to sort of fall into the victim attitude that the system is doing something to me,
Yeah.
even though it may well be imbued in the system. I follow these, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Don Miguel Ruiz and the 4 agreements,
Mm-hmm.
which is, if those who don't know what they are, is being impeccable to your word, never taking anything personally or trying not to take things personally, trying not to make assumptions. And that's a really key agreement, which is where even my biases are very visible. Somebody will take a particular action or do something, and I am reading that action through my biases, which may be entirely different from the intention of the person taking those actions. And I found that just being aware of my own biases can significantly help me through that. And then just bring my best self to work. I mean, that's the 4th agreement. You know what I mean? That's all we can do. And you just be clever to navigate through that.
So another piece of advice to the audience, I love this. First was the trade groups, get involved in the trade groups.
Absolutely.
Book the 4 agreements. I 100% agree with you. It really does it sets the stage. It sets a really nice stage. Someone said to me the other day, I hope you're not taking this personally. And my response was, I read the 4 agreements. So it's a good one. Paulette, how about you? What can you share here? Just, you know, your advice and actually I'm going to add something to this. So now you're having that conversation with a mid-level woman.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
let's talk about that. You and I here.
All right. Well, I'm in part of a lot of women groups for mentoring as well. And the number one issue that comes up is the confidence issue and being able to speak up or ask for something, ask for that raise or speak up in a meeting when something is said. And one of the biggest things is like, I just said that, but now he's saying it and everyone's paying attention. And sort of that confidence to be able to not question yourself. I think the way you speak, the way you project, you know, putting it in statements as opposed to questions, you know, it's kind of like that you need that confirmation or someone to say, yes, what you're saying is okay. Those are the types of things I think need to be, from a woman's perspective, is taking that assertiveness and being confident in yourself and going in there and asking for what you want and saying when you see something incorrect and speaking up. And that's really, really hard. I do believe in not looking at things as competitions, trying to realize that all your coworkers, everyone's going to be moving to different places if you're mid-career or starting your career. And we know our industry is all about networking, the people that you know, being part of those things and creating relationships. Relationships are key because you never know where someone's going to be. And I believe not taking things personally, as Narendra said, is huge. Because I think a lot of times when we're starting off in our career, we kind of take it as it's a competition and taking things very personally. And I think that really affects growth from the very beginning stages.
Yeah, no, you made a very good point. I mean, generations are very different. My generation, it was like people yelled a lot and you just kind of ignored it. If you yelled at me, people were like, why are you yelling at me? Like, we're not yelling at you. We're talking about the situation.
Right.
Jason, I'm going to ask you the hard question here. So I do want to know what your advice to someone, but we're living in a very different time where I'm just gonna put it out there flat out that, you know, they're saying the white guy in entertainment is where is he today? How do you feel? What is your take on this and everything? And what is your advice to someone, you know, a young individuals kind of trying to get to that leadership role? What would you say?
Well, I really resonated with what Narendra and Paulette said. You know, I have my own way of saying it. To your specific question, I view myself as fortunate to have grown up in a very diverse environment. Mm-hmm. And today we have a very diverse company. We operate in 16 countries. We have, you know, Russians, Americans, Sri Lankans, South Koreans, people with different religious backgrounds, speak different primary languages. It's very diverse. Different Colombians working with Russians is always interesting. So we have a very, very diverse organization. I have, in my whole life, had just a very diverse experience. And one of the things, you know, what Narendra said about the 4 agreements and being your best self, I really resonated with, and I think that dovetails nicely with the concept of confidence. The way I think about it is that as individuals trying to be our best selves, we are typically kept from becoming our highest self or self-actualizing because we have fear-based holding patterns that arise from our experiences. You know, yeah. We're all traumatized in some way, shape, or form throughout the course of our life, and that gives rise to fear, very commonly, fear of rejection. You can call it fear of failure, fear of abandonment. These are all synonyms. And when we have a palpable fear of rejection, we can't be creative. We can't be inspired. We are prohibited from taking our best ideas to our team, to our company, to the market. Ideas that could change the world, could make things better for people. And so I think it's incumbent upon ourselves, if we want to be leaders, if we want to make an impact in this world, to first confront our own emotions and to metabolize those stored traumas, to rid ourselves of those fear-based holding patterns so that we can go out in the world and make a difference. We can be confident, to Paulette's point. We can be our best selves and bring our best selves to work, to Narendra's point. And that's really what I focus on. That creates congruence for me, and it allows me to, I think, really connect with people, have empathy, and you know, and it helps me to try and ferret out my biases. Of course, we all have them, but to me, that's a core value, is trying to self-actualize by metabolizing fear-based holding.
Yeah, you make a very good point, and I try to say to people all the time, it's not what you are, it's who you are, and it's how you react. And okay, so 3 things I think that are great takeaways from this for anyone is get involved in those trade groups. I'm going to say it over and over again, especially OTT.X. It's a great one. The 4 Agreements, fantastic book. Everyone should read it. You can get it on Amazon. And get rid of that fear. Fear is when I actually was faced with fear right in front of me at one point in time, and then was able to kind of overcome it, like step over it, things change. It's amazing. We're talking about leadership here. So people might be looking for specific steps on how to become a leader. But we just gave you 3 very important things that are the core. One's business related, one's just call it intellectual, and one is emotional. Is what big leader. So I think I'm short. We're a little. Does anyone have any last words that they'd like to share to the audience out there about you know, going into that next step or taking a professional jump? I know times are a little strange right now, but I don't know. Paulette, you're smiling. I know you've got something on your mind there.
No, it's something that Jason brought up, the whole fear of failure. I think actually I want to go a step further than that. Embrace failure, because you have to try and do something and fail.
The faster you fail, the sooner you succeed.
Yeah, exactly. And that failure is going to teach you what to do next on how not to fail the next time. And maybe you might fail again, but I think that fear of failure prevents people from doing something, asking for that raise because they're fearful of something, or asking for that position because they don't feel like they have the right qualifications or can't do it just quite yet. I think failing is the key to success and moving forward.
Great. Great. Narendra, any words of advice for the audience?
No, I think, and a variation of that is, I think people need to realize that over their careers, they need to reinvent themselves and bet the farm every couple of years, and be cognizant that the past does not have to dictate your future. Just because I had an engineering degree does not mean I have to be an engineer for the rest of my life. So, you know what I mean? So reinvent yourself. Great.
Well, I want to thank the three of you. I thought this was a great conversation, and we now all get to know each other if we didn't know each other before. I think I'm going to hand it back to Eric, who I think can take it from here. But we can all wave goodbye to the audience and thank you. And thank you, Eric and OTT.X, for letting us do this.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you to all of our panelists. That was fantastic. I think we could go on for another hour or two on that. I myself had a ton of more thoughts that I would love to hear our panelists follow up on. I know I have a bunch of questions as well. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get them answered, but I do want to recommend that everybody join us again after our short lunch break. We're just getting started here. We have the next segment of the show today is an interactive segment where we'll have an opportunity to join some discussion groups with key leaders across our industry from some really prominent and innovative organizations, BBC, Vision Films, and why it's escaping me? And Sony Pictures, of course, will be joining us. So, you know, I'm also hopeful that you can join after those sessions where we have a networking happy hour, and we're inviting all of our panelists and speakers to come and attend that as well. So you get a chance, if you do have questions, you can get those answered and continue our discussion at that time. We've learned that the importance of community and networking is something that's obviously really important. So we're just going to take a quick break. We will be jumping on, it's actually a separate meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for that into the chat window. So if you don't have it, you can get it now. You also would have received an invite to it. So as you know, you can go back, since you were able to find us here, you can hopefully find us in that meeting. So it's not going to be a webinar, it's actually a meeting where we can all see each other. So there's the link is in chat, and we'll just take a quick break and look forward to seeing you all in just a little bit at 1 o'clock. So we've got about 20 minutes or so. Thanks, we'll see you in a bit.